Hey there, family members. How well do you remember Snow White? Because I think I might have some bad news. But first, I would love to know who your favorite of the Seven Dwarves is. Leave your answer in the comments and then get ready for a kind of rough theory. You have McGann, the Fangirl. Make sure you subscribe and check back every week for new fandom videos. So, Snow White gets a lot of credit for being the first ever animated film way back in 1937, but that's not completely true, because Lottie Reiniger made The Adventures of Prince Ahmed back in 1926, so a full 11 years before Disney made Snow White. Fair enough, Reiniger's film was more of a stop-motion animation, so I totally get the room for debate, but I demand an asterisk that Snow White is the first ever animated film. Anyways, if you go back and watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarves today, the script is really choppy. You can definitely see the influence of the old silent movies because they'd throw up these cards full of texts, and that was how they set up the scene and saved a lot of money on animating the story. And again, they were pioneering here, so the writers do deserve some slack, but how well do you recall the ending of Snow White? I know, we all remember the famous kiss that wakes up Snow White, but what about the next few moments on screen? Well, the prince loads Snow onto his horse, and she kisses 6 of the 7 dwarves goodbye. I mean, I'm not sure who she left out, but what the heck? Was one of the dwarves double nicknamed Smelly? Because why would you kiss 6 and not all 7? But during all these kisses, Snow White is barely opening her eyes. They're like shut the entire time. And as awkward as this looks on me, it looks even more awkward in an animated film where that's a very conscious choice. And now that I've said it, if you look for it, it's like awkwardly weird that Snow keeps her eyes closed as she kisses her friends goodbye, almost like she's afraid to wake herself up from a dream. Then, to pile on the weirdness, the prince takes the nameless horse's reins and they walk off until a castle appears in the distance. But guys, look at this! This is not the castle that Snow White started out in. This is a flipping castle in the clouds. There's no land, there's no water, it's got roller coaster style paths and loop-de-loops in the design. Honestly, it looks more like Atlantica than it does the castle that Snow started out in. And it's literally a castle in the sky! Let's back up for a few minutes before the iconic kiss happens. Snow White is laying in bed, looking dead, and a block of text comes up that says, "So beautiful even in death that the dwarves could not find it in their hearts to bury her." What? The movie flat out says Snow White died, but it keeps getting stranger. The next line of text reads, "They fashioned a coffin of glass and gold and kept eternal vigil at her side." And the branch shown in the background goes from a spring setting to a heavy winter setting. So not only has at least 2 or 3 seasons passed at this point, but they made Snow a glass and gold coffin? They're supposed to be miners of simple means. How on earth did they afford those very pricey materials? The last card reads, "The prince, who had searched far and wide, heard of the maiden who slept in the glass coffin," and we're definitely transitioning into a spring setting here. So, that is quite a few months to be living in a coffin without any food, water, or fresh air. Even with True Love's kiss and all, I don't think the prince would have had the power to bring Snow back from starvation, dehydration, and asphyxiation. You guys, I think Disney was too kind-hearted back then to tell us directly, but Snow White died, and the end of the movie is her going off to heaven. That may feel a little out there, but hear me out. I think her soul got lost here on Earth, and she couldn't take herself there, hence spending 3 seasons just sitting in the elements, not decaying at all. Snow's spirit had to wait for someone to lead the way for her, and that makes me suspect that the prince also died. Snow White ended up at the dwarves' cottage after running on foot from the forest nearest her home. And the prince was there at her castle during the beginning of the movie, so Snow White wasn't that far disconnected from her homeland that nobody should ever be able to find her again. Taking 3 seasons to find a princess that's only a few miles at best away from her home is really bizarre. Are you telling me the dwarves hid the fact that she was there and that she had died? Because honestly, a glass and gold coffin sounds more like what a palace would do for their princess, more than what dwarves would do with a questionable amount of income. Like, we don't even know if they own the mine, what kind of money they get from the mine, but we do know that they live in one house that's pretty small, and they don't have a lot of luxury items, so I think they're working for somebody, not actually making their own money off these gems. So with all these bizarre details going on all around this movie, maybe the prince actually died while he was on his journey, quote, far and wide, looking for Snow White. After all, it is awfully strange for a prince to be wandering around by himself with no guard or anyone else to ensure his safety while he's in the woods. Or maybe the prince just died of dysentery or something like that, because this was set in like the 1400s, and a cat scratch was all but a death sentence back then. So even though we don't see the prince's death, it's not hard to fathom that something could have happened to him in almost a year's time. I suspect that we aren't seeing the actual prince at the end of the movie, but rather his spirit come to claim Snow White and take her away from any more misery. That's why Snow White won't open her eyes. She's imagining this beautiful goodbye scene to all of her friends because she still hasn't processed that she's dead. A lot of movies use walking off into the background as a really ominous way to end the film. There's this feeling of unsettlement because even though you might see what's up ahead, it's still a very uncertain future of whether or not they'll get there. Basically, it's designed to make you feel like, do they even get where they're going? And it opens a lot of room for sequels, even though I don't think Disney was thinking about sequels when Snow White came out. But to not see Snow White and her prince get back to the castle, and to not see them get married and go live happily ever after like we do with Cinderella, well, that's weird. And if you remember, Snow's wish at the wishing well was for the one she loved to find her. And he did, it just took a while, and kind of happened in an unexpected way. Going back to the sequel talk, if you notice, Snow White was never given a sequel movie, even though they made sequels for most of the popular old Disney films in the 90s and 2000s era. And don't get confused, there was a Snow White sequel in 1990 called Happily Ever After, and I remember it being a pretty decent movie way back in my little tiny person age, but that movie was done by Filmation, which is in no way affiliated or associated to the Walt Disney Snow White franchise. The Snow White story is so old there are no rights to it, so anybody can use it. So just because you see something that says Snow White doesn't mean it's endorsed or approved or made by Disney. So why snub Snow White, Disney? Even Aurora got a sequel in that Enchanted Tales straight to DVD stuff that performed horribly. Well, because there's not a lot to say when someone's dead and they ascend to a castle in the afterlife. That's the harsh reality that Disney snuck in right under our noses. Maybe some adults caught on, but a lot of kid viewers couldn't even read to notice words like death or coffin. Then we all grow up and we already have the ending stuck in our heads, so we don't pay any attention to the text anymore. So I actually have to give Walt Disney props for slipping this by us for so long. It might not be reality, but happily ever afters are apparently death dreams. Want to know a secret? Promise not to tell? We are standing by the wishing well. Make a wish into the well. That's all you have to do. And if you hear it echoing, your wish will soon come true. I feel like that is the weirdest song. You know, Disney is very famous for their songs, but that Wishing Well song from Snow White is so awkwardly paced and set up. Am I crazy? Do you agree? Let me know. Happy derps. Well, that's all I have for now, but this video's not quite over yet. I get a lot of comments that say, do a theory on this topic, but I've already done those theories. So please consider going to my main channel page and clicking on the video tab so that way you can see everything I've done. You will probably find a lot of things you like that you never even knew that I posted. I want to let you know that I also have two other channels, Say Halo Goodbye Gaming and the Fanily Family Vlogs. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed enough to hit subscribe and share. I can use all the help I can get to let other people know that this channel exists. And if you made it this far, leave me a comment that says something like, hey, I made it to the end, and then let me know what kind of videos you want to see in the future. I can't make any promises, but the more people that request something, the more I can look into it. Okay, well, I love you. I'll see you in the next video.